Students, week 4 of online learning, week 4 of social distancing, where all I do every day is teach you. And I still eat lots of food, and I still lift weights. But that's it, every day. We are starting a new unit this week on the Civil Rights Movement. We just finished up our unit on the 1950s. And I argued to you about the 1950s. It is a time that is a very good time for most Americans. It's when the American dream is made available to a greater percentage of the population in our country. African Americans do not benefit during the 1950s. And if we look at the numbers, we can see that that is true. They have less access to education. Their unemployment rates are greatly elevated. They make less money. They have worse access to health care, and they're not given the opportunity to move to the suburbs and actually increase their stock or increase their standing in life. Why that is happening and why that is a reality is because of Jim Crow laws in the South and segregation. Now, at the end of the Civil War, way back in the 1800s, we signed 3 amendments into law. One, the 13th Amendment says slavery is illegal in the United States. The 14th Amendment says that if you're born in this country, you're a citizen. And if you're a citizen, you're guaranteed equal access to the laws, or what we call due process of the law. And the 15th Amendment, which says that as long as you're a citizen in our country, you can vote. But despite these amendments, life doesn't change a lot for African Americans, especially African Americans who live in the Deep South. Less than a quarter of African Americans are actually voting. Not because they don't want to, because they're scared. And also, because of segregation laws, a lot of barriers were put in place to restrict their access to actually cast their ballot. In this lesson, we're going to talk about Jim Crow and why Jim Crow was a reality. Why it was a reality is because of something that we talked about a few units ago when we talked about the ruling of Plessy versus Ferguson. As I told you then, and I'll tell you now, Plessy was 1/6 African American, and he jumped on the white part of a train in Louisiana. They arrested him, and he says, according to the 14th Amendment, which says that I'm a citizen, which means the law that applies to you also applies to me, means I can sit wherever I want to on the train. And what the Supreme Court said in that famed court case back in 1896 is they said that as long as the access to public facilities are equal, they can be separate. We call this the separate but equal doctrine, which was the law of the land for 50 years in the United States. In this lesson, at the conclusion of this lesson, you'll see how we finally, as a country, decided that law was not right, because our facilities were definitely separate, but in no way, shape, or form they were equal. You have 2 tasks to complete during this lesson. Task 1 is to access the Google Slides and then fill out the note sheets, only a few questions. And then your assignment is you're going to look at some examples of Jim Crow laws in the Deep South and even a Jim Crow law that existed in Utah. I'll see you at the end of this lesson. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.